Thanks for joining us today on the Big Blue Podcast. I'm Greg Stone, Metro Campus Provost, here with my co-host, Dr. Leigh Goodson, President of Tulsa Community College. Good afternoon, Leigh.
How are you doing, Greg?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing great.
Good. And we are here at the Thomas K. McKeon Center for Creativity at Metro Campus. And our guest today is Beth Coppoc, who's one of our adjunct faculty in communications. She's taught previously Comp 1 and Comp 2, and we are really excited that I'm really excited she's here. I won't speak for the president.
I'm excited too, but I want you to tell us, what is that called again when you could switch the word and it's spelled the same? What is that
Your
called?
last name is spelled?
That's palindrome.
Yep.
All right.
C-O-P-P-O-C. Same forward and backward.
Yes, so her last name is that.
It is. And you don't have many last names that are palindromes. You can't do that with my last name.
Nope.
But we're really excited that, Beth, that you're here because you're here to talk to us about your dissertation work, which is on the history of Tulsa Community College. So we've really been looking forward to getting to sit down and talk to you a little bit. Tell us why you came up with this topic to begin with. How did that happen?
It was at the end of a job interview. The interview had gone well until Mary Cantrell, in fact, asked me, what's the difference between a 2-year school and a 4-year university? And I said something ridiculous, such as, well, it's just more relaxed. And I cannot believe I got the job, but here I sit.
Wow.
So after that, I decided I needed to do some research. And I had a student come and talk to me, and she said, somebody important is in the hospital. And I said, what do you mean important? And she said, he had so much to do with TJC, but I can't tell you who it is because it's confidential. So come to find out, it was Dr. Phillips. And I found out that South Oklahoma City Junior College, now OCCC, had a dissertation published by Dr. Henderson. I met her, but we didn't. I thought, they can't be one up on us. And
why not?
Yeah. And also, I had to talk to my advisor at ORU and get the prospectus that I needed for the research. I had to get that approved. So.
And you just finished this dissertation last year.
Right.
So congratulations.
Thank you. I defended it successfully the end of July.
Master's in Education Leadership, right, from ORU?
Yes, an EDD, yes.
Excellent.
Oh, a doctorate.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So how did you go about approaching that research? We were talking a little bit before we started today about getting to look through copies of minutes and some of the really what are the founding documents of the college and the records of its founding. How did you go about doing that research? Where did you find material for your project? I
started talking with Marina Matavelis, the longtime historian. She's recently retired, and she worked for the college for a number of years, dating back to the original employees. And she had some documents up there, and I made copies of those. And we're not talking about digitized material. And also I asked for all the minutes from the state regents. I asked for the minutes from TJC. I was looking at the newspapers in the area, and they were not digitized, so I was looking at microfilm and microfiche. The early leaders wrote blueprints, which were documents to tell what we would be doing in the future. Those were quite helpful. And I looked at self-studies, and in total I cited approximately 250 different documents.
Wow. And were a lot of those, where are those documents at? I mean, we have some things here, but State Regent's Office and...
Yes, and after I finished the research, I took a box of the materials up to Northeast Campus to that, and the recording, right, to the Heritage Center, and the recordings that I did.
Oh, that's
so
great.
That's where a lot of it is now.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That is.
And I looked at other dissertations that had been written about other institutions.
So most institutions have had their history recorded in the format of a dissertation, many.
Many of them, not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some junior colleges in Oklahoma, and the community college is a species of the junior college, and so that's how I kind of keep the terminology straight. And that goes back to Gleaser, who headed up the American Association of Junior Colleges. So not all of them, but many of them have.
Interesting. So let's talk about that for just a second. We started out as Tulsa Junior College and then became Tulsa Community Colleges. What were some of the major forces that brought about our founding when we started as Tulsa Junior College?
Well, I asked Dr. Van Treese, I said, why was TJC called a junior college when in fact it operated from the very beginning as a comprehensive urban community college? Mm-hmm. And he said in Oklahoma the nomenclature was junior college. Mm-hmm. And so we went with that until the movement gained traction to change the name. So that's how that came to be. And some of the early forces for the junior college movement nationally, Provost Stone and I were talking about his research on lyceums, the Chautauqua movement, and I've heard you in some of your research talk about the land grant movement. Mm-hmm. Thomas Jefferson comes to mind, and he said that higher education should adapt to real uses of life and what he called the present state. He was communicating in French with DuPont, and I'll always remember that quotation. And he's one of the early forces of the junior college movement.
Wow.
That's exciting.
Which what later in the 19th century became widely discussed as practical or useful knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our guest today on the Big Blue Podcast is Adjunct Professor Beth Coppoc, whose doctoral dissertation was on the history of Tulsa Community College. We're really excited to have you here today. Tell us one of your favorite stories about TCC's early history.
I was talking with Dr. Van Treese, who participated in the study, and I visited with him several times in person, also viewed interviews that he conducted, and also some interviews that Dr. Phillips had conducted. And they talked about how, and this is interesting to me, how TJC became successful even though we did not have competitive athletics. Mm-hmm. So people from the public would ask, well, are you going to have a basketball team? Are you going to have a football team? And Dr. Phillips and Dr. Van Treese said, no, that's really counterproductive to what we're doing here at this urban college. And I asked Mayor LaFortune, and he said, no, we've never had a sport identity. And to me that was interesting, that we overcame such perceptions from the public. And they said, well, we probably, who knows if we could compete, and it would cost too much money to compete on that level.
Yeah. Well, I have people that ask me about it. Sometimes they want residence halls and athletics. And there's a joke on the administrative team that if I leave town long enough, Dr. Bill Ivey will start a soccer team.
Soccer team at West Campus.
A football team is what I always say, at West Campus. So that's interesting, though. Well, that is interesting because Rose State, which is another urban community college in the state, they do have athletics, but OCCC does not. Is that accurate? Do I have that right?
Well, and there's been a dissertation written about also written about Rose State, too. So.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay.
Beth, I'm curious, is there something that really surprised you about the history of the college? That something that you really just didn't expect to find or were sort of surprised by in your research?
There were several things. One thing, there had not been an institution of higher education established in Oklahoma in 50 years prior to the establishment of TJC. And of course, I asked Dr. McKeon, I said, why is that? And I remember that he said, it's because we in Tulsa seem to take care of ourselves here, and we didn't depend on others. And that surprised me. And also, when talking with Dr. McKeon, he told me that when he was out in public, people would come up to him and tell him how much they admired TJC, now TCC, and he said sometimes we're in the trenches here at the college and we forget that half the families in the community have been affiliated some way, somehow with TJC, now TCC.
Yeah. Yeah, the footprint is really large.
Yeah, it is.
So what happens now that you've completed and defended this dissertation and this part of this research has culminated? Where does it take you from here? And do you think you'll work further on the same topic and dig a little deeper, or pivot and do something different?
It'd be interesting to extend the research because I focused on the founding, essentially 1965, when the state regents reported the need for such education, through 1971 when the first graduates walked across the stage. So it would be interesting to extend the research past the first initial part of it. And when I gave the presentation at the Public Scholar Series, someone in marketing was there, and we commented about what research is going to be conducted for the upcoming 50th anniversary of the college. And the founders were focused on educational need, meeting educational need. That phrase came up over and over, the major theme of the dissertation. And I have my students talking and going out in the community, meeting needs in the community. So this whole notion of service to the community is at the forefront of what I'm doing now in class. And they go out in the community and they do their service, and in public speaking classes they have the opportunity to reflect on their service.
Wow. It's always great to have those service learning opportunities for students. They really, we know make a big impact in academic performance. So absolutely.
Well, and it relates to their careers.
Right.
Yes, in a lot of cases.
Well, Beth, we just have a couple of minutes left, so we always ask our guests at the end of these interviews what we call the big question, which is if you could go back in time and give some advice to your 18-year-old college-going self, what would that advice be?
My parents had the expectation that I would go to college, and sometimes I thought I should get through with degrees sooner than later. Life gets in the way. I did finish a master's degree, and I just finished my EDD. And sometimes we think that waiting is wasted, and looking back, I wouldn't view it as wasted time. It's life. And that's what I would tell my younger self.
Have some patience with yourself. Yeah.
And not get weighed down with waiting. It's not necessarily wasted.
That is good advice.
That's good advice. Well, thank you for being here today.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. You've been listening to the Big Blue Podcast. We want to thank our guest, Beth Coppoc, for spending time with us today, and we want to thank you for listening. Remember, you can catch the Big Blue Podcast each week on the Week at TCC and on the Creativity channel at YouTube. Provost Stone, thanks for being here with me.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks, Beth.
Thank you.
Have a great day.